Part 112. The vicious female supporting character's character collapsed after her voice was eavesdropped. Author, R.O. Which John Word. Chapter 1111. Chapter 1111. Don't worry about face in front of me. But the current Mo Bao is a bit too small. He is not Li Baikon's opponent at all. Li Baikon held his son tightly in his arms. Sun Yanzhe saw his son's appearance, as if his face was not good, so he quickly asked, "What's the matter? What's wrong with Mo Bao?" But he didn't expect that Li Baikon frowned when he heard this. Nian, what do you mean? You mean that I will hurt him? If you don't know, you will even think that I am abuse him. Sun Yan's expression changed. What do you mean, Li Baikon? When he saw Sun Yan's expression change, Li Baikon quickly said, "I didn't mean anything, I was just joking, but you really care a little too much about this brat. Nian, I know your temper, but you have to know that this brat is a man, not a girl. If you pamper him too much, you will harm him." As he said that, he planned to take the Ma Bao away. Sun Yan originally wanted to say something else. But when I think about it, it still makes sense. Mo Bao is a boy, so you should not pamper Mo Bao too much. Mother. Don't think that Mo Bao doesn't know. It must be that this narrow-minded man saw that his mother cared about him so much, so he felt a little unbalanced and wanted to deal with himself. Humph, how could I, the smartest kid in the world, not understand such thoughts? Just struggle desperately. Sun Yan wanted to say something. But at this moment, Sun Ying'er smiled and said, Nian, you are usually so powerful, as if everything in this world is under your control, but I really didn't expect that you don't even understand this. Sun Yanzhe looked at Sun Ying'er next to her when she heard this. I heard Sun Ying'er say, I know you care about Mo Bao, but Mo Bao is also a boy. I think it should be taught by Baikon. This father has a great influence on boys. You can also say that this is between men. Dialogue. Sun Yan thought of what happened in his previous life when he heard this. Mo Bao had no father in his previous life, and Li Baikon had died long ago. Although Mo Bao has grown up, there are still some things that are a bit inconvenient for her as a mother. So don't worry. You really feel like a loving mother but a failed child. You don't want to be as powerful as Baikon, but end up having a barbecued pork. When Sun Ying'er said this, the two of them laughed. Sun Yan still couldn't help but say, even if my baby is indeed a barbecued pork, then it must be the best one. Nian, what do you mean by this? You really think that you gave birth to a barbecued pork? Fortunately, Mo Bao is not here. If Mo Bao knew that you thought so, then Mo Bao would definitely be angry. Sun Yan also sat on the sofa. Sister, what you said is wrong. Don't you know that our Mo Bao is the most obedient, so even if he hears similar words, he will not be angry. Forget it, you should be a reliable parent. Children are very thoughtful. What if you really say that and hurt his mood? But Sun Ying'er smiled after saying this, and you having said so much, I really don't think you would say this in front of Mo Bao, so what you are doing now is basically just showing off. Sun Yan pursed her lips and said, Sister, even if you knew it, why did you say it like this? It really makes me lose face by saying it like this. What about you? In our relationship, you still care about face in front of me. End of this chapter. The vicious female supporting character's character collapsed after her voice was eavesdropped. Author, R.O. Which John Word. Chapter 1112. Chapter 1112. How old is he? It was different from the cheerful atmosphere of the two women. In the study room, it can really be said that there is a tense atmosphere. Father and son stared at each other with big eyes. Li Baikon knew that this little guy just saw him coming in, so he deliberately asked his mother to say similar words. Just to make myself angry. But who is Li Baikon? But how come this brat's father is the same as this brat? The reason why I brought this brat here is that I hope to teach this brat a so-called lesson. After all, we are so old, and we should understand everything that needs to be understood. Lichen Mo, you are already very old. As a father, I think I should say something to you. After all, you are an older child now. If you really don't understand anything, then it's a bit bad. Hearing this, Mo Bao felt as if his native language was speechless. This guy can really tell. This man is really shameless. How old is he? Just a child under 3 years old. If he had no memory of his previous life and was just an ordinary child, he would know very little at his current age. This father is really a little too crazy. Lichen Mo, did you hear what I said? Mo Bao raised his little face and said, Dad, I understand what you mean. You are jealous of me. You are jealous of my mother being nice to me and my mother loving me. Li Baikan suddenly felt that he didn't pay enough attention to this child. A little bit I didn't take him to heart. This is a very dangerous thing. After all, Mo Bao was so good without me in his previous life. If he is alive in this life and Mo Bao is not particularly good, then his father is a bit incompetent. Nowadays, children who are less than 3 years old know what jealousy means. So this jealousy must have been learned from others. When he thought of this, Li Baikan's alarm suddenly rang, and then he knelt down and asked softly, Mo Bao, jealousy, do you know what jealousy means? Who taught you this? Tell daddy about it. Mo Bao is here. When I heard this, I realized that I seemed to have said the wrong thing. After all, at his current age, he shouldn't say such things. Well, how to do this? What else can I do? I can only blink. Restore the cute look. But who is Li Baikan? He is so easy to fool. The key is just to watch the changes in Mo Bao's expression. This child is too precocious. Li Baikan felt that he should spend more time on Mo Bao. After all, he had never fulfilled his responsibilities as a father in his previous life. This life not only has to be fulfilled, but if it is normal, it should be doubled. Li Baikan felt that he had to pay attention to it. Hand out your mobile phone immediately. Josu, find me a parenting expert. It would be best if he has strong achievements in child psychology. Mo Bao. What is child psychology? What does this dad mean? Does he think there is something wrong with his mind? When I think of this, Mo Bao suddenly became anxious. He quickly walked to his father and hugged his thigh. But after hugging him, Mo Bao didn't know what to say. He was really a little anxious. I really don't know what to say. This father doesn't think there is something wrong with his brain, and then, Mo Bao was really panicked now. End of this chapter. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. The vicious female supporting character's character collapsed after her voice was eavesdropped. Author, R.O. Wich John Word. Chapter 1113. Chapter 1113. Why is the brat like this? Just when Mo Bao was thinking about what to do with his little head, Li Baikan slowly squatted down, and then sighed deeply. I'm sorry, I'm really sorry, Dad has been neglecting you a bit. Don't worry, Dad will definitely pay more attention to you in the future. On the body. Mo Bao looked at the man in front of him. He saw seriousness and responsibility in the man's eyes. His big, gentle hands touched his head. It really makes people feel that they can be relied on. I have to say that this father is good except for robbing his mother from him. Mo Bao, I know I don't know how to be a good father, but I am willing to learn. I am willing to learn how to be a good father. This is my first time. I hope we can make progress together and help my father be a good father. Mo Bao and Li Baikan laughed. Then Mo Bao said, Can I tell you anything? Yes, if you have any opinions about me as a father, or what you hope to do to my father, you can say it. You can say whatever you want. You don't have to be too reserved in front of your father. When Lee Baikin finished speaking, he clearly felt that the child in front of him seemed to have changed suddenly. He became more cautious, even a bit cautious. Such a turn for the worse really made Lee Baikin feel a little uncomfortable. This is his and Sunian's child. Moreover, I have clearly decided to compensate him well in this life and make this child the happiest child in the world. Why did it become like this? Lee Baikin really couldn't describe his annoyance now. Really, if you have anything to say, just say it. Dad is by your side. No matter what you want, I can give it to you. As long as you say it, then it's okay. As everyone knows, Mo Bao is waiting for these words. Then Mo Bao looked at Lee Baikin's expectant eyes and said, Dad, can you not your mother from me in the future? Can you give her to me, Lee Baikin? If Lee Baikin still can't understand that this little guy is pretending, then Lee Baikin's work at such an old age will really be in vain. Dad, why don't you speak? Why don't you speak? What you just said was so good, why don't you speak now? Isn't this small request of mine acceptable? Lee Chenmo. Mo Bao snorted coldly in his heart. This is really a hypocritical man. What I said just now was good, but now it has just turned into this in the blink of an eye, and I can't show the posture that a grown man should have at all. Now Mo Bao really feels a little regretful. I regret how this guy could be like this. If I had known that this dad was like this, I would not have expected this guy at all. Absolutely not looking forward to it. If you don't hurt yourself now. If he doesn't do something to make this dad completely lose face, then he won't take this guy's last name. Dad, you don't keep your words. Why, on TV and in cartoons, it is said that this dad just doesn't keep his words. Why is my dad like this? Why? I don't want this father, I want to change my father, I want to change my father who listens to me. This dad is too abominable, I don't like this dad, I really don't like this dad, I want to go to my mother and tell her, I want to change my mother. Lee Baikin really had a headache listening to this little guy who kept shouting that he wanted to change his father. What kind of thing is this? It is obvious that this brat has done everything by himself since childhood, so why is this brat still like this? End of this chapter. The vicious female supporting character's character collapsed after her voice was eavesdropped. Author, R.O. Wich Jong Word. Chapter 1114. Chapter 1114. Except for robbing my mother from me, this father is good at everything else. Although I am still a little annoyed. But Lee Baikin endured it. After all, this is his biological son, absolutely his biological son, so no matter how bad the son is, he is still his. Teach this child well. When he thought of this, Lee Baikin calmed down his mood a little, and finally said, Mo Bao, you are a big boy now. Dad, you should be sensible. If you are fooling around like this, your mother will definitely know about it. You will be angry. I don't think you can make mom angry no matter what you do. Hearing this, Mo Bao really wanted to roll his eyes at this guy. This guy is really awesome. It was just that I wanted to dominate my mother, but in the end I was able to say such a thing. If this is really the case, then I can only be rude. Let me tell you, your mother is my wife, and Mo Bao, you will have your own wife when you grow up, so you can't rob others, just follow what your mother taught you, and when other children are playing, they cannot grab other people's things. Mo Bao, haha, this logic can only be taught to so-called 3-year-old children. This is really the best. Mom doesn't love me anymore, woohoo, what did I do to make my mom love me? Why, I did something wrong to make my mom angry. Mo Bao looked like he was crying. As loud as possible. Almost everyone heard this sound. Lee Baikin didn't expect this brat to have such a loud voice, so he wanted to say something. However, he didn't expect that Sunian would push the door directly in at this time. Sunian was able to understand that there were things about this boy that she, a woman, didn't know before, but there was no need to educate him like this. Lee Baikin felt a little guilty after seeing Sunian's face. After all, it was his father who made him like this. But a guilty conscience is a matter of guilty conscience, but he feels that it cannot be like this. After all, if this brat is allowed to stay like this, then he doesn't know how proud he will be. So when Sunian was about to walk in front of Bao, he was stopped by Lee Baikin. Baikin, what do you want to do? I know you are anxious now, maybe even angry with me, and think I am a little too cruel, but you still have to listen to my explanation. I am doing this for our son. Do you really want our son like a little girl? When Sunian heard this, his face suddenly turned ugly. What does Lee Baikin mean by this? What is a little girl? How could Bao become a little girl? Bao is obviously the most heroic man in the world. How can this guy talk? How can he say such things? What kind of father is this? He talks ill of his son like this. Sunian's face looked really ugly at this moment. I don't know how ugly it was. He quickly held Bao in his arms. You have to teach your child well. I don't care. You are his father. I also know that everyone in the world will harm him, but you are the only one who won't. But I think you still have to pay attention. This child is too young and needs a lot of attention. When Sunian said this, he thought of what happened in his previous life. In her previous life, without Lee Baikin, she had to deal with a lot of things. But at the same time, we must take into account calligraphy. The sadness in it, I really don't know how to describe it. End of this chapter. The vicious female supporting character's character collapsed after her voice was eavesdropped. Author, R.O. Which John Word. Chapter 1115. Chapter 1115. Women just want to be messy. Sunian's appearance at this moment really frightened Lee Baikin and Bao and his son. They didn't expect that Sunian's reaction would be so big. Lee Baikin felt really guilty when he heard Sunian's thoughts and thought about what happened in his previous life. I really didn't mean it, Nian. I know very clearly that you didn't mean it, but what I mean is that you still need to pay more attention to some things. Speaking of which, you may not know that this child cannot cry too much. If the child cries too much, it's easy to get sick. Sunian began to help Lee Baikin with science popularization work. When Lee Baikin heard this, he still felt a little regretful. Why haven't I noticed this yet? If you pay attention to these. At the same time, Bao also felt very regretful in his heart. Why did he disobey? If he had been obedient, then this would not be the case. The two father and son apologized in their hearts. Even where Sunian couldn't see it, the two men simply glanced at each other. For the sake of his mother, Bao couldn't go too far no matter how he felt about his father. After all, mother is the best person in the world. For the sake of his mother, he can be temporarily wronged. The two men had a temporary truce. The calligraphy does not matter. But Lee Baikin had to think of something. Coax your little woman well. Otherwise, it would really be. Sure enough, when I returned to the room at night, I saw that Sunian was lying on the bed early, with her back to him, and she didn't want to talk to him at all. Lee Baikin couldn't help but sigh in his heart. Hey, my own son. Although he is young now and has no so-called abilities, he is very capable in front of his mother. Lee Baikin lay on the bed and carefully reached out to hold Sunian in his arms. But the little woman did not move. Just when Lee Baikin couldn't help but wonder if he really fell asleep. Sunian's heartbeat sounded again. This man is really hateful. He bullies his son during the day and bullies me as a mother at night. It is really hateful. This man is so shameless. Lee Baikin. It's really unfair. I really wasn't in the mood to bully this evening. Okay, okay, don't be angry, I really know that I was wrong, I completely know that I was wrong, don't be angry, if you are angry, then your face will. Before Lee Baikan finished speaking, Sunian turned over and sat up. Such a gaze really made Lee Baikan feel as if he had said something wrong. He really said something wrong. Do you dislike me for being old? Do you dislike me for having children? Lee Baikan, I really didn't expect you to be such a person. I really misjudged you after saying that. He held the pillow and held it to him. Lee Baikan was a little confused. What are these, what are they? But at this moment, Sunian's heartbeat sounded again. Don't you think I don't know? If I get entangled with this guy about what happened before, this guy will definitely come up with a series of excuses, and I will definitely not be able to defeat this guy. He, I have to prove to this guy that I, Sunian, am not a so-called vegetarian. Don't they all say that women like to mess around? In this case, not only can I regain my place with this man, but I can also teach this guy a lesson. Sunian's words told Lee Baikan what else to do. Alas, I can only accept it. After all a husband has to do is make his wife happy. If you can't even do this well, then you're really not good at it. End of this chapter. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. The vicious female supporting character's character collapsed after her voice was eavesdropped. Author, R.O. Wich Jong Word. Chapter 1116. Chapter 1116. A loving mother often loses her sons. No, I absolutely don't. Sunian's face looked unprovoked. Why not? Then what did you mean by what you just said? What does it mean if you are angry? What will happen to your face? I mean, you're not pretty without a smile on your face. These words made Sunian couldn't help but sneer in his heart. This guy really knows how to speak. Maybe this is this guy, why he is the second male lead in this novel. After all, the male protagonist in that novel is not that indifferent, just like Huo Linyuan, who wishes he could carry a refrigerator on his back. Then there is so much nonsense like this guy now. Do you think I can believe what you say? But Lee Baikan sighed deeply. If you don't believe it, there's nothing I can do about it. Anyway, that's what I mean. But if you think you're causing trouble for me, or just tell me a lesson, you'll feel better, then whatever you want can be done. Although Sunian was really helpless at this time. But Lee Baikan's attitude still made her unhappy. After all, when you act helpless, you hope others will think you are acting helpless. What do you mean, Lee Baikan? Ungulg, how can this guy be so good at saying ga sente a sente a sente a sente a sente a? This guy has said so what should I do? Really how could this matter develop to such an extent? What should I say now? Is this the case? If so, why am I a little unconvinced? Oops, it really feels a bit too bad. Listen to Sunian's messy words. The corners of Lee Baikan's mouth became wider and wider. Then he got close to the little woman who was complaining about herself in her heart. Then he gently hugged the little woman into his arms. Okay, I know you want to say something. If you have any anger, just vent it on me. Anything is fine. Just don't keep it in your heart. I don't have anything, I don't have any anger, there is no so-called anger in my heart. I am very happy now, very happy. Don't talk nonsense. If you talk nonsense, then I really feel sorry for you. But as Sunian spoke, he saw Lee Baikan's face. Lee Baikan had a slight smile on his face. It's like, you can do whatever you want. As long as you are happy, you can do anything. Just vent out your anger. Venting it out like this will be good for your health. What is going on? Why is this guy like this, talking like this? Why does it feel a little weird? Hey, you should be looking for a man who is not bad at eloquence. If you are looking for a man who is good at eloquence, you will end up like this. You will always be unable to speak, which is really annoying. But I feel a little uncomfortable in my heart, very uncomfortable. How can I find the ability to deal with this guy? What kind of method can I find? I actually know what you are thinking in your heart. I just feel that you are a bit too young and you treat him so. Do you know what I did to him? These words made Sunian a little stunned. I really don't know this. This made Sunian immediately feel embarrassed. Look, this may be called a loving mother with many failed children. Nian, you, a smart woman, really never thought that you would encounter such a thing. End of this chapter. The vicious female supporting character's character collapsed after her voice was eavesdropped. Author, R.O. Wich Jong Word. Chapter 1117. Chapter 1117, Why does this guy feel like he's looking down on others? Sunian didn't like hearing this. What does it mean to encounter such a thing? What's up with her? When Lee Baikan saw that Sunian's expression was completely bad, he quickly said, I mean, you care a little too much about Mo Bao, but you don't say anything or ask anything now. You are like this. What do you think? Can this really teach calligraphy well? Sunian felt a little unconvinced. What do you mean by this? I taught calligraphy so well in my previous life. Why do I feel that in the eyes of this guy, I am no better than a loser? This guy really feels a bit like a dog looking down on others. I don't know how excellent Mo Bao was in his previous life. Although Sunian was complaining in his heart, Sunian's outward attitude was still very serious. Lee Baikan smiled when he saw Sunian like this. No matter what happens, as long as he can treat Mo Bao well, Sunian will take it seriously. In fact, Lee Baikan really thinks that the best mother in the world is Sunian. Sunian, then tell me now what happened and why it became like this. So Lee Baikan told the matter. After Sunian finished listening, he had an idea. If I had known that this was the case, I would not have listened to this guy. From what this guy says, it's a complete waste of time. Lee Baikan, I usually think you are very smart. Why are you like this at the critical moment? How old is Mo Bao? Why are you telling Mo Bao this? Mo Bao. But Mo Bao is our child. He has a lot of things in him. We must teach him well. And now I am just starting to train his abilities. Little by little these words made me want to say something. Sunian really didn't know what to say. I always like Mo Bao to be more relaxed in this life. After all, Lee Baikan's father is here, so Mo Bao doesn't have to bear as much as he did in his previous life. I really forgot, no matter how relaxed Mo Bao is, he is still a child of the Lee family, not a child of an ordinary family, and it seems that he cannot be relaxed. Thinking like this, Sunian felt a strong sense of powerlessness for some reason. The feeling of powerlessness is one that cannot be put into words. As the person next to him, Lee Baikan certainly knew what Sunian meant, and he quickly said, I know what you mean, but don't forget, Mo Bao is a boy, and boys have to bear a lot of responsibilities thing. Let's talk about it again. Mo Bao will marry a wife in the future. If he really doesn't have very good qualities, then which girl will be our son's wife? Do you really want your son to be a bachelor for the rest of his life? Sunian began to shake his head crazily when he heard this. Of course she doesn't want this. The identity of our family is indeed not simple. To put it bluntly, in a family like ours, children are most likely to learn bad things, so we must be more careful in the future. If he really learns bad things, it can really be said to be harmful for his whole life. These words made Sunian's expression change immediately. After all, as a mother, I don't want my children to learn bad things at all. Baikan, what should we do? Lee Baikon's heart subconsciously twitched when he saw Sunian's expression. It's over. This is a bit harsh to say. End of this chapter. The vicious female supporting character's character collapsed after her voice was eavesdropped. Author, R.O. Wich Jong Word. Chapter 1118. Chapter 1118. Lee Baikon immediately said, okay, don't think too much, I know this child well, and you have to know that your child is famous for being smart. In addition, if he is really wronged, really will you cry so hard? These words made Sunian think of something. This Mo Bao seems to have always been smarter than normal children. As if you have been wronged. In other words, Sunian looked at Lee Baikon when he thought of this. Lee Baikon sighed deeply when he felt the little woman's eyes coming towards him. Looking like this, I really feel helpless towards the child. This made Sunian really feel a little. I know what you mean, but this child is really difficult to manage, and our children are so smart, they are completely different from ordinary children. If we don't pay attention a little bit, then our children will become bad. I think if you don't, maybe you'll see our Mo Bao go bad. So, you really don't need to be angry with me because of this, you are angry with me because of the child's problem, so. But the way Sunian looked at Lee Baikon slowly began to change. Sunian may be anxious about Mo Bao and do whatever he wants, but Sunian is still Sunian. Even if her brain fails to react temporarily, it will react in a short time. That's why Sunian looked at Lee Baikon. Humph, this guy is saying that I am making trouble unreasonably. Humph, even if I am really making trouble without reason, then this guy cannot say that I am making trouble unreasonably. He really thought I couldn't hear it, he was talking about me in a roundabout way. This Lee Baikon is really capable. Lee Baikon wanted to explain. Sunian said coldly, okay, it seems that Mr. Lee has some skills and has his own plan for educating children. If this is the case, then Mr. Lee, please make me a plan, which is to write down how to educate children, how to teach children, you show me the plan, and then I follow your plan. I do everything according to your wishes. I think in this case, we can't be in a situation where I'm angry. Then Lee Baikon was kicked out of the room. Lee Baikon stood at the door and sighed helplessly. Hey, it's not good that this wife is too smart. You can only go to the study room. How to write this, how to write it to satisfy Sunian. Lee Baikon felt that he had to think about it carefully. He is not a fool, of course he knows that he wants to coax people now. But just when Lee Baikon sat down, the study door was opened again. Lee Baikon looked over. Immediately I saw a small radish. He is also the initiator of this matter. Lee Baikon couldn't help but smile when he saw the small figure. This little guy is really smart. Now Lee Baikon really feels that he should not have been careless in the first place and should not have been careless in Jingzhou. With Mo Bao being such a devilish person, he really feels more and more that his life in the future will not be easy. Then he saw Mo Bao walking towards here little by little on his short legs. Mo Bao was under Lee Baikon's sight, then walked up to him and looked at Lee Baikon with a puzzled expression. Dad, why are you still working so late? Dad, don't be so tired. You still have to be careful with your body. If you are tired, if so, what should I do? End of this chapter. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. The vicious female supporting character's character collapsed after her voice was eavesdropped. Author, R.O. Wich Jong Word. Chapter 1119. Chapter 1119. I seem to know what this dad wants to do. Lee Baikon raised his eyebrows slightly when he heard this. But children are still children. While speaking, I still couldn't control the smile on my lips. This brat. Now Lee Baikon really wants a daughter, a caring little cotton-padded jacket. But Li Baikan also knew that he was just thinking about it. He was really reluctant to let Sunian suffer the sin of having a child. I also feel that if I really do that, then I might really be a beast. After all, to be precise, Sunian suffered twice for himself. So what else can be done? This brat can only be pampered well. Mo Bao was in a particularly comfortable mood. Seeing that his father was unhappy, he was very happy. Humph, you said those words in front of yourself, trying to dominate your mother. But as for the result is like this. In this situation, if he didn't come to take pleasure in the misfortune, wouldn't he have missed the opportunity? Dad, why don't you speak? Are you uncomfortable? What's wrong with you? Why are you ignoring me? Wow, did Mo Bao do something? Mo Bao laughed on purpose. I also deliberately let this dad see it. There is no other way. This dad is not what you call a fool. So if he was not careful, he would find clues, although he felt that even if his father tried to break his own head, he would not think of such a situation like his rebirth. But, Mo Bao still felt that there was no need for him to worry about his father. That would be very troublesome. When Mo Bao walked in front of Li Baikan, he stretched out his hand to lift him up. Hey, Li Baikan deliberately sighed deeply. Just sighing like this really made Mo Bao feel as proud as he wanted. Humph, let this guy always like to teach himself those messy things. Let him teach. Happy now? Mo Bao, Dad is fine. Mo Bao said in a firm tone, Dad. Hey, okay, my Mo Bao is smart. I don't think I can deceive Mo Bao at all. If that's the case, then Dad will tell you the truth. How smart Mo Bao is. When I heard this, I understood that this father was planning something bad again. This father is really stingy. Just doing a little bit caused him to be kicked out by his mother. Ahem, why doesn't this son cheat on his father? Is that right? This is a very normal thing, a super normal thing. Your mother kicked me out. After Mo Bao heard this, his alarm bells started ringing. He is not a fool. And after getting along with him for a year or two in this life, I also know that my father also likes to pay attention to face, so when he said this, he must have bad intentions. Ahem, it's very dangerous now anyway. Mo Bao raised his head and looked at his father. What does this old guy want to do? Mo Bao really feels a little dangerous now, super dangerous. Since it is so dangerous, of course we have to run away. But the current Mo Bao is obviously a sheep entering the tiger's mouth. How can he escape? I heard another deep sigh and said, I'm not a brat like you yet. Your mother needs me to designate an education plan for you. Education plan. Mo Bao seemed to know what this father wanted to do. Although you are a boy, you are so young. How should we make plans for you now? Well, if we make too many plans for you and make you tired, it will be very bad for your health. After all, there is a saying called pull seedlings to encourage them to grow. End of this chapter. The vicious female supporting character's character collapsed after her voice was eavesdropped. Author, R.O. Wich Jong Word. Chapter 1120. Chapter 1120, You'll be lucky if you don't exhaust Mo Bao to death. Mo Bao is really angry now. The kind that is super angry. Because of what the father said about worry, but, it was typed on the computer screen, get up at 6 o'clock and run for an hour. What kind of beast is this? Mo Bao was angry again because he had expected this father in his previous life. Why did I expect this guy in my last life? What can we expect from this guy? There is no point in expecting it at all. If he were really allowed to go back to his previous life, then Mo Bao really felt that he might give himself a big slap in the face. What the is this? The key point is that now he is still a child who cannot read, no matter how angry Mo Bao is. Now I can only pretend not to know him. That's right. I just don't know him. I'm really angry. So angry. What is this? Mo Bao had already decided at this time. If when the father reaches old age and the doctor asks him whether he should extubate the tube, and he hesitates even once, then he is not his biological child. Let's do this, then learn to swim. Children like to play in water the most, plus swimming lessons for 1 hour, and then cultural classes can't be relaxed. After all, learning knowledge is the most important thing. Mo Bao really felt like he couldn't control himself now. I really can't control myself. Woohoo, why do you let yourself have such a father? At this moment, the study door opened again. Sunian walked in. Sunian originally saw that it was so late. Even if he was making trouble with Li Baikan needed a good rest. But I didn't expect to see such a scene when I came to the study. I did not expect such a picture. The whole picture is quiet and harmonious. What are you father and son busy with? Sunian walked over slowly. Walked to Li Baikan's side. Also looked over subconsciously. I saw Li Baikan's computer screen. When Sunian saw that moment, he really felt like countless crows were flying above his head. There are really a lot of crows. Sunian really didn't know how to describe her mood. This is the plan you made. Yes, this is the plan I made, Nian. I think if we use this plan to cultivate Mo Bao, then Mo Bao will really have a bright future. Mo Bao looked over furtively. When I saw my mother's ugly face, I couldn't help but feel so proud. Let your father threaten you just now. Ha ha ha, I was so proud just now. If you don't let him suffer misfortune now, then you really are not a son. Then Mo Bao looked at his mother aggrievedly. And he shouted. Sunian just wanted to take Mo Bao away from his unreliable father. What's wrong, Nian? I followed your wishes. What's wrong with you? No matter how I look at you, I feel like you're angry again. Sunian had a straight face. Look at what you wrote. How can I not be angry with you like this? If I really don't get angry, I would be a fool. I even feel that you are being obedient. You don't take my words to heart at all. You are really a bit too much. But Li Baikan was very innocent. Nian, what do you mean? I followed your wishes. What's wrong? With my method, I think I can train our children to be the best in the world. The best? Sunian couldn't help but glance at the computer screen after hearing these 3 words. Just these things arranged by Li Baikan. You are lucky if you don't exhaust your calligraphy to death. End of this chapter.